Much for joining right on time. We will wait just a few more seconds so that we can have more people coming in. Meanwhile, feel free to use this time to introduce yourself in the chat. Feel free to write your name, your country, so that we create a more familiar environment in this room. And thank you so much once again for joining in time. Good. As we are having more and more people coming in, it's super nice to have to see such a vibrant chat room as well. And hopefully you all can use the Youth for Climate platform as well for your questions, and this chat as well. We're super happy to have you all today. My name is Sahara Shabeik, and I'm one of the young authors for the Youth for Climate initiative and have been part of this community since Milan. It's been really overwhelming and emotional to see this community grow very organically with young people and their passions working on climate solutions from all around the world. Really appreciate you all joining today and taking time out to join the fifth webinar of In Our Shoes Learning with Young Climate Innovators, like you, of course, series. Today's webinar is focused on climate literacy, which is, of course, very crucial to know more about climate action. And hopefully it's going to be a nice learning session for you all. We have four dynamic young people and young innovators and their projects lined up for today's discussion with two keynote speakers full of insights and knowledge on the field. We are very excited with and very grateful as well for all the engagement for the on this webinar. Thank you so much for leaving all the comments and inputs on the platform. Before we go into the program and everything, I want to flag one important thing, that there are translated captions available for this webinar. You can access these captions in your language, in your preferred language, by going to the caption feature at the bottom bar of your screen and selected the speaking language as English, and then the preferred translated language that you want to hear us in. I also want to highlight that it is really crucial for us to hear your voices reflected throughout this session and this webinar, of course, afterwards as well. And in order to keep this webinar very interactive, we have been working on some Zoom polls, which you will see on your screens throughout the session from time to time. There are some capacity building Zoom polls, some informative Zoom polls on climate education, of course, and you can also use the chat function. So feel free to make the chat function your home and ask any of your questions, and we're here to answer them. Let's introduce the webinar series without any further discussion. So before we introduce our speakers, allow me to share a little bit about why are we here today and what this webinar is, for example. This webinar is part of a series convened by the Youth for Climate initiative, led by the United Nations Development Program and the government of Italy. Youth for Climate aims to identify, amplify, support, and scale youth-led climate breakthroughs. The first Youth for Climate call for solution was in 2023, and it sourced over 1,100 youth-led solutions in the areas of climate education, energy, food and agriculture, and urban sustainability. Ultimately, we awarded 50 teams from across 39 countries with 20,000 US dollars each to realize their work. Some of them are present also here in this room. Their solution covered topics like clean cooking, alternative building material, agroforestry, organic waste, climate literacy, nature-based solutions, climate resilience, solar energy, digital solutions, and mental health. The webinar series, which takes place every month, this webinar series is on different topics that we previously mentioned. It spotlights each and every area of these topics. And these serve as a space of learning and reflection among young innovators working on the similar topics. And hopefully, after this session, you will find some friends and some allies that will share your journey on climate education and climate literacy forward with you. Um, these series are titled "In Our Shoes: Learning with Young Climate Innovators," and you might question yourself like, why? Why in our shoes in specific? Because young people are paving the way forward and leading the change in their communities. And because there's so much to learn from their experiences and daily challenges when it comes to doing this work, actually. And to make sure that we capture a broad range of experiences beyond those of the innovators, you will hear directly, you will hear from directly like today. We're also hosting online discussions ahead of each webinar, in which we encourage you to contribute to, of course. We have already captured some of the interesting contributions from the topic of climate literacy, and you can continue to contributing through the link provided in the chat box now for the Youth for Climate platform discussion on climate literacy. Um, so we will also just before we start, also want to share that everything that we will discuss in this webinar will be captured into a brief and shared with you. And also the online discussions as well will be part of that brief. And one interesting fact about this webinar in specific is that in March 2024, this March, the Youth for Climate Call for Solution application was launched once again. And climate literacy was the most popular topic. It was the one in which there were received the most applications. So thank you so much for the overwhelming support and interest in this topic. And hopefully we can continue the interest and enthusiasm on the platform itself. So hopefully the purpose of being here is clear now. Now allow me to introduce our first keynote speaker for today. And for the first keynote speaker for today, we have Fernando Andrade. Fernando is a passionate specialist in climate change with more than a decade of experience in different aspects of mitigation and adaptation. He joined the UNDP first in 2016 as a specialist in project management and climate financing for UN-RED Targeted Support Program. He has also been country program manager for the NDC support program, and the Biodiversity Finance Initiative, the BioFin in Ecuador. And he has also been a senior regional advisor in governance and climate finance for Euroclima Plus program. He currently serves as the regional technical specialist on climate change for Latin America and Caribbean region with the UNDP. So Fernando, without any further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Saeed, for the introduction and all the comprehensive explanation about the Youth for Climate webinar series. And it's an honor for me to be here, and happy to see that many people connected. So it means that their youth, well, besides all the scope of work that I have in the Latin American and the Caribbean region, I am also very well involved in all as a focal point for youth and climate in the Latin American region, because I love not only the energy but also the inspiration and innovative ideas that youth bring into the table for the conversation, and make sure that climate is not something that is discussed today, but it will be discussed tomorrow, and bringing solutions that will be discussed tomorrow too. So happy to talk about this webinar, climate literacy. Let me share my screen, and please let me know if you can see it properly, okay?
We can hear you fine, yes.
Okay, so there, please let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so Something that I would like to talk about, and I know that we all agree in this point, is that education is key to addressing climate change. It's key to everything, but to climate change is especially important because uh, we have seen that from the formal perspective, there's not much being done around climate change to be included into the formal curricula in different countries. But what we need to understand is that not only formal education is necessary, but also non-formal and informal education. So I have here some points that current and future generations need to have a deeper understanding of the issues that are at stake when it comes to climate change. So that only is you only gain that from education, but more importantly is to understand that the education that we receive at early ages that start to shape our consumption patterns that which conversely later in the future are gonna change the production practices because we as consumers, we as the demand, we can ask for more sustainable practices from the products that we receive, from the services that we receive, and education is key on creating those consumption patterns too. And formal and non-formal learning are also commonly believed to be playing a critical role in motivating actions on climate change mitigation and adaptation. Uh, we need more education around climate change in the schools. We need more education about climate change outside the school. So that's important that we have in mind. And well, I think that this number you've seen or heard about this number that this is a UNESCO analysis that find out that 69% of the curricula of 530 different schools around the world that they did the survey did not reference climate change at all. So that's a little bit worrisome because it's more than half. But there are some efforts that not only countries are doing, because countries are actually in this new set of NDCs, a vast number of countries have included or had included climate education as part of one of the main pillars in their policies to ensure that the NDCs are more robust and are more impactful, looking at not only in the 5 years in the 5 years scope, which is the scope of the NDC, but even more looking at the as part of their long-term strategies before 2050. So this is very interesting that countries are looking at this. And there's some work, and I picked just three of them. Like, for example, in Namibia, has linked accessing $18 billion in climate finance for its NDC to ensuring the retention of nationals with the necessary skills and knowledge, all based on the education side to make sure that they can achieve their NDCs. In the case of Bhutan, they has made its national education institution a central pillar of its national adaptation plan. This is magnificent because countries that are more propense or are less resilient to the effects of the climate change. So they need to start to build up that resilience through education from the beginning. And finally, Zambia is launching a major climate change education project that seeks to transform its education system as a driver for green growth. So countries are not looking climate change and education only as something that they need to build resilience, but also as an opportunity to create economic growth and green economic growth, which is more important. But that's from the formal education side. But I wanted to focus a little bit more in the non-formal education side and climate change, because here we have to be extremely careful as we have seen that there's a lot of different courses, there are a lot of different material coming around and growing exponentially all over the place. And that's great, but that's also a little bit dangerous in terms that we need to be cautious and vigilant that non-formal education may be a source of misinformation and disinformation. And that's something that we need to be aware of. So it's necessary that we ensure that we're accessing trustworthy and reliable sources of information. And so go to for example, to the UN. Come to us. We are more than happy to point you to the right direction, where you can find the proper information, who are our partners that are working with the trustworthy programs. Um, go to reliable sources to avoid the disinformation and misinformation. This is very, very important that you always keep in mind when you are accessing to non-formal education about climate change. And here I wanted to highlight, or to yes, to highlight a few examples. We have UNICEF here also on the ground, and they are doing a magnificent job. We have the children around the world to capture what it means to be a child growing in the age of rapid climate change. That's very interesting because the work that UNICEF is doing is not only addressing or trying to support youth, but more to children. And that's very interesting because from a very early age, it's easier for us to absorb all that information. And the World Meteorological Organization, they work closely with the weather presenters who are committed to education and outreach on climate change, who have formed a network. It's called Climate Without Borders. As far as I know, there's over 300,000 people making part are part of this network so far. So it's very interesting to see how you can enter and provide information not through the regular channels. Who would think that weather presenters would be like a good entry point for climate education? So there is where you show innovation and innovative thinking. And UNESCO, that I know is here also, they have a magnificent program, and they're doing also a magnificent job, like a climate change education for sustainable development program. That's literally a program that aims to increase climate literacy among youth. So it's very interesting what our partners and our sister agencies are doing around the world. But I wanted to share with you some of the resources that we have at hand. So I just, let's say, picked some of them that I think it would be interesting for you to know. And this document, it's called Elevating Meaningful Youth Engagement for Climate Action. It's not like a climate education product. It's not as like a course itself, but it's a document that we have created some sort of framework that kind of provide you guidance to explore what meaningful youth actually means. Not only youth participation, but meaningful youth engagement in climate action from different perspectives, from the conceptual part to all the practical parts. So, and how you can actually make a difference, and how can you have impact into your local decision making platforms. So I invite you to access to this document, read it through, and you will find very interesting resources for you to learn. Something that we also have identified is that sometimes the jargon used around climate change might be difficult and might be sometimes it seems that we're just talking to each other. So that's what we want to avoid. We want to leave the echo chamber and actually make sure that climate change is enriched to everyone. It doesn't matter what are the background. So we have created this climate dictionary that we're trying to provide or try to translate, if I may say, the climate change terminology into everyday concepts. So everybody is familiarized with climate change. So we think that this is a form of helping people to learn in a non-formal way what climate change is, what climate change means, and how climate change can actually impact your everyday. I also invite you to access to the climate dictionary. So if you are sharing then after the information, so I left the links in each one of these resources so you can easily access to them. And this People's Climate's Vote 2024, this is not a education as it is, but this is a source of information very, very interesting because we partnered with Oxford University, and this is our second edition, the 2024 edition of the People Climate's Vote, where you can access into information of pretty much all 190 countries that UNDP is working with on what people thinks about climate change. And there's a very interesting section. So if you go to the People Climates vote, you can access to the full set of data, set of information, and you can disaggregate by age. So you can see how youth is thinking about climate change, which is very interesting because that gives you like a clear idea on how, what's the trend on the consumption patterns, what's the trend on agreement or disagreement with government decisions. So it's very interesting information there that will help you to inform your own decisions. So this is completely unbiased. This is our questions that were asked to regular citizens, and we just gathered the information. This is one of, actually, this is the largest survey on climate change around the world. So that will give you like a very big set of data and information that you can access to make your own decisions. And especially you can actually see what youth people is thinking about climate change in different aspects. And about education and literacy, so this final resource that I wanted to show you is a course that we have developed in the LAC region. Something important that we need to understand is that climate action doesn't come by its own. You need to partner with other organizations. So to create this course, for example, we partnered with different organizations like 6 different organizations that we work with. Most of them youth organizations, because we wanted this course to be from youth to youth. So made by them to them, so they understand how can approach better to. Unfortunately, it's only in Spanish right now, but we're working in the English version. But those who speak Spanish, so please feel free. You can access to the course. It's in our Learning for Nature platform, and this is a self-paced course that presents you like in a very comprehensive way from the different stages, from the most basic concepts all the way to climate diplomacy. So you will have like a broad spectrum of knowledge there, and you can learn from the basics to the more complicated things. So it depends on what are you looking for. It's in different modules. So it's completely free, and we recently launched like 3 months ago. We have this yesterday screenshot, so it's 2,500 people already enrolled in the course in few months. So it means that you to my this is my reading, that youth is really interested in learning more, and so they go way beyond the activism and go into the decision making platforms, because it's important that we go very well informed into the decision making platforms to actually make a difference in those spaces. And to close, I was asked to provide a little bit of feedback for the solutions that were presented. I was one of the members that were helping to do the revision of those solutions, and I bring these to 3 probably points that I would like to remark is that I saw some very amazing solutions presented there, and some others that needed a little bit more of work and could be improved. But if I could say something that fits into all those that probably didn't get to the point to go to the next stage, is that you need to focus on the 3 main things. First, you need to be realistic. It's a limited budget, so you need to make sure that the activities that you're proposing are I agree with that budget. I know that sometimes the enthusiasm that we have, we want to do everything, and we want to create and we want to change it, but we need to be realistic. What are the resources that we have at hand? One of those resources is the budget, but there's other resources like the people that is working with us, the materials that we have around to build all this together. So let's try to be more realistic with what we have. But I'm not saying that you cannot be integral. Being realistic doesn't mean that you cannot be integral. So you can see in a very integral way and create the connections between different socioeconomic and environmental aspects. It doesn't mean that you're going to solve everything with one project, but it means that you can start making the connections. You can start creating the path to move forward. So let's to make the right connections because I saw very interesting proposals that were focused strictly to something and they didn't see the whole picture, making the connections to the social and environmental aspects. And finally, being synergetic, it identifies synergies with other initiatives that may help increase your scope of action. So if you had like a partner or organization that is working similar cases, let's try to show those connections. Let's try to see what are the connections that you can create with the government to make this more impactful. So let's try to find synergies and let's try to bring them together. That's all from my side. I hope that it's been helpful and happy always to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Fernando, and really glad that you're here. Thank you so much for giving so many advocacy points in just those small minutes, basically, and for all the resources as well. Just as William mentioned in the chat, we will share all the links after the webinar. I want to highlight two things that you mentioned, and that resonated a lot with me, Fernando. Number one was the NDC's progress, very relevant for the 2020-50 deadline, 2025 deadline, I mean. Most of them are due next year. So really encourage young people who are present in this room today, go look at yours, your NDC. Have they been updated? If not, advocate for climate education, just as Fernando showed some stats. And also the NAPs, the National Adaptation Plans as well. Thank you so much for bringing both of them in the climate literacy perspective to our young audience today. I think it was really relevant to policy solutions. Thank you so much for sharing the how to basically be climate fluent with the dictionary and all the other things, all the other resources that you shared, Fernando. Thank you so much for that. Chili, you helped with my next part. So let's see how many of the people can guess this one right, because it's a Zoom poll and was right at your screen. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay. So we all know the answer of this one now, probably. It's time for us to have our first Zoom poll, a little bit of interactive session. Please feel free to leave all of your questions, comments, any questions towards what Fernando just shared in the chat as well. And let's go to the first Zoom poll. The first Zoom poll says, according to the UNESCO report of 2021, what is the percentage of school curricula worldwide that does not reference climate education? So option 1 is 33%, option 2 is 45%, and option 3 is 69%. Let's wait for like one short minute. Click on the right answer that you think is the right answer, and then let's see yeah, let's see what the right answer is. Okay, yeah, so you all, I hope that you all can see the Zoom poll on your screen. You can definitely send in the chat box as well, but if you see it on your screen, feel free to click on the answer that you think is right. Good. And then let's check how many of us, yes, exactly. Thank you so much. This is indeed 69%. 69% of the countries do not, 69% of the references do not have any relevance to climate education, climate literacy in the school curricula. And hopefully these policy solutions that Fernando shared can become in handy. So that really well bring us to our next keynote speaker. Our next keynote speaker is Manan Frizols. Manan is a French young specialist on climate education and international relations and meaningful youth engagement. She holds a master's degree in international relations and diplomacy. She has specialized in conflict analysis and international justice. Manan is an associate project officer at the youth program in the sector of social and human sciences of UNESCO, where she has been coordinating the UNESCO Youth Climate Action Network, the UCAN, since 2019. So Manan, without any further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sire. And hello, everyone. I recognize some of you and happy to see you back. So I'm pleased to follow up after Fernando's presentation because it was great, and I think I can link it up, to as a continuation of it. So on my side, I would like to present you 2 points. So I have been invited to talk about the UNESCO Youth Climate Action Network first, but also I would like to drop a word because we are here to talk about climate literacy today, a word also on the Greening Education Partnership, which is very important as well. So I would like to start, if you allow me, Saer, by sharing my screen to go through the UNESCO Youth Climate Action Network because I believe it is very relevant to the Youth for Climate initiative. So can you just confirm that you can see before I move ahead?
Yes.
Okay, amazing. So I would like to tell the young people present today what is this UNESCO Youth Climate Action Network. So basically, UCAN is a network of networks. It has been created with the observation a few years ago that we had many youth network worldwide, happening in every country, in every city. Um, Many youth wanted to engage in climate action, but not having either not the right resources, the right knowledge, the right network as well. And so we thought, why not to provide them instead of creating something new and that will duplicate what is already being done on the ground, but rather a platform that would allow them to connect among each other, to share their experience, to share their knowledge, and to share their experiences so that they can achieve better and they can connect together and maybe build up together as well. So that's what the rationale when it was born 5 years ago, and we're very pleased that today, it is fully up and running. So it is a network that fosters not only cooperation but also youth-led action and research, with the support of UNESCO. It covers all kind of climate action that is included within UNESCO's mandate. So for those who don't know, it equals to culture, education, the sciences, and information and communication. You can act at 4 levels, as you can see on the screen, like first one, and this is why it is super important to work with the network that have action on the ground, is to be responsive to the local challenges. And this, we cannot do it if we remain at the global level, right? We need to work hand in hand with those who know and with those who see what's happening, right? So this is basically the rationale, how to be this bridge between what is happening on the ground and UNESCO and how we can make this ecosystem work to deliver better. And then the second point is to help youth to co-create knowledge and to help to disseminate it, because the basic observation was the following: not everyone has access to climate information first, but also how do we ensure that youth are not only beneficiaries of this, but can also co-create it? And I will come back to it right after that. Of course, like we also support, the capacities of young people, how to increase their knowledge on climate and so on, but also how to gather the voices, from the networks on the ground and share it into more global spaces, such as the COPs, such as the high-level UN meetings and others. Now, a quick overview of it, and this may be of interest of some of you. I will share all the links. So if some of you are asking, oh, how can we be part of it? I will share, the information in the chat right after. So basically at the moment, we have just welcomed 56 new networks. So we have now, a great community that has increased to more than 10 million young people. So what you see on the screen was just about last week. And with the new networks on board, like we are increasing the community and we are calling more youth network to come on board. Last week we had a first capacity building session where each network has the capacity to choose a date of the month, for example, to share its expertise to the other members of the community. So, for example, last week was about climate data, but another network can have more experience on climate negotiation, for example, and this community animate itself, along the way. They can ask questions, share their perspective. For example, the meeting was about the Mediterranean climate impact, but there were people from around the world in the conversation comparing their experiences, saying, "Oh, I am from Seeds and I live this, I relate to this coastal experience, and this is a bit how it works." And this is the beauty of it. Like they can exchange and they can build better, and it can help them to co-construct new solutions. In terms of the topics that are covered, as I was presenting, it covers different topics related to what UNESCO is doing. So in terms of the World Heritage Protection, climate literacy, water management, disaster risk reduction, ocean protection, biodiversity, and of course the new technologies as well. But this is not exclusive and really is open to the dynamic and the new proposal from the network itself. I would like to come back to what you can see because this is a very important point, how it started, because UCAN is a youth-led network. So I am here on behalf of UNESCO today to present it, but I am not UCAN. Youth are UCAN. They are the one who set it up, who thought it, brainstormed it, spent hours, working online, working during the COVID-19 period, and imagining what they needed and how they could implement it together with UNESCO. So I would like to emphasize, this youth-led aspect because it's very important, and I will not go into detail, and I can respond to any question afterwards, about how it worked, for the first 3 years. And just for you to know that now, and the way it is working is that every 2 years we are selecting a steering committee of 15 young people, 3 per region, to have a balance among the region and to have all a diversity represented. And these are in charge of, initiating new activities, leading the UCAN for 2 years. But it's not only them, right? They have to animate the community. So they are steering it, but, involving the other networks in their activities. So stay tuned because 2025 is coming soon. And if you're interested, also to have a steering role, like it will be the right moment by the end of 2025 to apply and to propose new leadership and solution. Now, a few ideas on what it can be. As I was mentioning, the co-creation of knowledge is very important. This can, allow young people to participate in great publication that UNESCO is doing or other organization, in terms of having the possibility to really share the voice in something concrete and not only to be in the street, even though it's important, to claim whatever we youth need, but here it's in terms of something that can stay and that can be shared to others. Another aspect is the grassroots youth-led projects. This one is great because what does it mean? It means that we want new ideas, and this can only be done if it comes from youth themselves. So if you see on the screen, there is one example of the African Youth Research Challenge, for example. This one was proposed by one of the youth network in Africa saying, okay, we lack research from young people and research overall on climate change in Africa. How can youth do better? And how can this research, inform policymakers in Africa? UNESCO knows how to produce, youth-led research to inform policies. How can UNESCO help us to develop this initiative? And this is what we are doing for the coming period. So a lot of exciting things that we can do together, but this is, by gathering our common knowledge, our common experiences and resources so that, we can build upon it. I will come back. You can see different things on the screen, and I would be happy to share more. We don't have a lot of time today, but one thing I would like to mention is that we have just published a survey, and I echo what Fernando shared before, about their great study on people's voices. We are sharing a study on youth voices specifically. So not all people, but only youth and their vision on climate change. I will also share the link in the chat. And the idea is to gather young people vision on how they feel about climate change wherever they are, in the world, because they can feel it differently, and also how they act upon climate change. And some of them don't. We are not all climate engaged. So this survey is for all youth so that we understand how is the youth community today. They engage and the one that are not. So I ask for, your participation, and also, feel free to share to your network, to your family, to whoever is concerned, and this will help, to understand better the vision. I will finish by saying what you can do when you can. Of course, like there are these only monthly meeting that I mentioned in the beginning, and that your network maybe can share experience, expertise, or wherever, just gather knowledge from others, but also send project proposal to the steering committee to implement, in a certain period. They can also contribute to this newsletter to advertise about your activity. For example, if you're in Pakistan and you are leading a great activity and you would like, the whole community to be aware of it, like this is a great thing. Like you can just propose this article and it will be published so that everyone knows about it. And finally, there are also working groups for different projects that are being called by the steering committee, on occasion. And this is open to any member and their community. If you have time and you want to engage more, for example, if something is interesting, you want to engage in biodiversity and this project is on biodiversity, then you can do so. I will close it here for UCAN, Esaer, just to mention that in addition to UCAN, and you will have the QR code and everything to join in a minute, what I would like to mention is that, how do I stop sharing? Yes. Use or welcome, a different level of UNESCO. It's a global priority group, and it's very important that youth are engaged as partners and full actors, in all our activities. And one specifically that relate to the topic of today is the climate education. Why? Where you may be aware of the Greening Education Partnership, this new global alliance that gathers government, organization, young people, civil society overall. It's more than 1,000 organizations that are part of the alliance, and more than 80 members, that are part of it. And the overall goal is to advance climate education, as this alliance, and everyone can have a role. The educational institution have a role, member states have a role, but also civil society has a role. And youth are very welcome to join this partnership because they are the one also that can contribute. So I know you have all amazing projects, and this is, very welcome to contribute. And this is where I link up to the Youth for Climate, just like Fernando, who commented on the application that we have revised for this 2024 edition, because I have been called to evaluate the one on climate literacy specifically. And what I found interesting is that many of the initiatives I have seen actually could very much contribute to the Greening Education Partnership. Some of them are about greening schools in one way or another to ensure that climate education in school, is much included. They have many ideas. Some of the, Youth for Climate projects that have been received are in this direction. Other are more directed to curriculum, and other are directed to greening communities. Well, hello, this is exactly what the Greening Education Partnership is about. So I think you should be um, very much not only welcome, but trusting themselves that they can contribute. They have the good ideas, and this could be fueling, the advancement and the delivery of it. So I very much encourage to join. And I will finish with my three main advices for the applicants on my side. I will not repeat the realistic one that Fernando already presented, because I second all what he shared about that. It's super important, the realistic, proposal. And I will focus on the two last one. The second remark on my end was I noticed a lot of use of AI, and I would like to share that this is not to the advantage of the applicants. From all what I've seen, and the qualitative proposal were not the one that, are filled by AI. I know it can be confusing because you think, oh, actually, it's better written by the AI, but it is looking like a machine. And actually, the best proposal were the one where the young person was presenting with passion in his or her video. They were like, I have testified that, noticed that on the ground, and this is my idea on how to tackle it. And they were speaking with their heart, with their word, with the exactly what they wanted. And this was like, okay, this is a good idea. This is realistic. This is, doable, and this is needed. So actually, I would like my first advice would be trust yourselves because you have good ideas and you don't need, the machine to present the project instead of you because the machine don't know. The machine haven't seen what you have seen on the ground. And I will finish with the last. Organize your ideas. A lot of proposals that I have evaluated were actually a bit confusing, like mixing ideas and actually not uh, too elaborated, like learn how to summarize. You have to put yourself in the shoes sometimes of the evaluator. If I have to read a whole paragraph where ideas are mixed up, what will I remember of it? If you want the evaluator to remember the important thing, how should I frame it? So maybe I highlight the title, maybe, think, can this sentence be simplified or made it in the better way? And the best proposal I have read were the one that were actually able to organize the ideas, in a simple and structured way. So I would say it was not so much about a better idea or a worse idea. It was the way it was presented. And this is the key. If you learn how to present it, like I think you will be much more successful. Sorry, Sayar, I hope I will finish here. And thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Thank you so much for such an insightful intervention, Manan. And I'm really sure that there are a lot of young people because the chat was like being so vibrant and it's coming with so many questions as well. Thank you so much for sharing all the, again, about the UCAN network and also the interlinkages between the UCAN network and the Youth for Climate as well. Um, just one thing to highlight here, when we were receiving inputs for this webinar discussion on the climate literacy webinar discussion, you are indeed correct that there were so many inputs that the young people have to offer about greening education. And now that you made that link, I can also kind of recall that. So in case you want to start that conversation, any of the young people listening to this right now want to write about their case studies or so on the platform is there to have that conversation. Thank you, Manan, and we will definitely get back to you also from time to time in the session. And thanks to all the young people who are keeping the chat very busy. I can see that. But I want to ask one question. Who is ready for the next upcoming thing in the session? This is again a Zoom poll, and you did not get a hint this time. So let's see how many of you actually get this one right. So let's wait for the Zoom poll to be live. You will all see the Zoom poll soon on your screens. And this Zoom poll is basically about which country has made climate education compulsory in all state schools as of 2020. So which is that country that has kind of made climate education accessible and compulsory in their schools? Is it Germany? Is it Italy? Is it Canada? So let's take 1 minute and choose your best fit answer, and then we'll check which one is the correct one. Okay. You can again send in the chat, but if you see on the see the Zoom poll on your screen, feel free to click on the right one. And yeah, let's see the answers now of the poll. And let's see how many of you have gotten right. I see a lot of the correct answer in the chat. We will soon see probably the answer on the screen. But indeed, the correct answer is Italy. And thank you so much for all those who wrote in the chat as well. It was really helpful. Yeah, but that being said, we will go to the next part, next very exciting and very informative part of this webinar. If any of you are listening to it and your country has also kind of included climate education and made compulsory climate education in your schools, let's discuss that on the platform, and let's discuss what it is looking like in implementation, because we have been speaking about like formal and informal education here in this webinar. On the platform, we talked about classroom and on the ground and education, how to make a link between them. So really interesting conversations are going on. Feel free to take your space, and if your country has made it compulsory or have not made it compulsory, let's have a conversation about that. So with that being said, we will now hear from very dynamic 4 individuals, 4 awardees for the Youth for Climate, who have been very patiently waiting for their turn. We mentioned them at the very beginning of our webinar series. We have divided the presentation from the young people into 2 sets. Number one group is focused on innovation and skills development, and number 2 is focused on climate education and awareness. In group number 1, we will hear from Jeremiah Taronka from Sierra Leone. He's representing his project Ecopreneur Student Initiative. Jeremiah is an award-winning innovator, entrepreneur, and a clean energy and climate action advocate. We will later on also hear in innovation and skill development group from Marina Fon, who is the program coordinator for Impact Hub, of course, representing the project Impact Hub, and she is from Cambodia. I'm sorry, just my brain skipped a thing. But Marina is from Cambodia. Super happy to have Marina and Jeremiah in this call today, and let's hear from you, Jeremiah. First, what do you think? Can you share about your project a little bit with all of us? And then can you also shed light on some examples on how Ecopreneur's student initiative engages actually with students in developing practical and hands-off innovative climate solutions? We have heard so much about some of the examples, but it's going to be really interesting to hear from you, Jeremiah. So the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So basically, to start with, the statistics that we just saw is kind of damning, where up to 69% of schools absolutely don't mention climate education or climate change in their curriculum. And of course, you have certain countries that may mention climate change, but then the flip side of just mentioning climate change is what does mentioning it translate to? Right? Do the students actually have hands-on opportunities, to solve climate change? So for me, what our project does is we want to see how we can utilize the experiences of the students, more especially students in high school, making sure that they are exposed to the skills, but then also taking it a step further in trying to see how they can utilize the skills to develop climate education. And just for a background story, Sierra Leone, climate education is not a big thing. And also, the unfortunate side is Sierra Leone is one of the top 10 countries that is most prone to climate change. So we are at the front of climate change, but then the education part is missing. So the whole idea behind our project is we're going to see how we can start very small by engaging these students, because plus or minus we've already missed out on the older generation. So we give them the skills that they need, the understanding of what is climate change, how do they contribute towards climate change, and then now we push them a bit further on how they can utilize the skills and their experiences from where they're coming from to solve, say, flooding, to solve the gender disparity within climate change, to solve the technology. And then they prototype, and then they will test these solutions that they've developed, and then we're there. And then they have mentors who give them experience. They also have the communities where they will tell some of their ideas, and then the communities will also give them feedback, what works, what doesn't work. We come back to the drawing board. So we keep this continuous cycle going on and on and on over time. And the good thing is, we just don't go and tell them, oh, climate change is real, and then everybody say, yeah. But then more importantly, how are they going to utilize the skills to solve it? And then, of course, certain things will not work. That is the beauty part of it. If it doesn't work, how can we come back to the drawing board? And then they have their colleagues, kind of the peer learning part components of it, where they are placed in peer groups. You can solve climate change alone. And then, they keep hanging it over time. So kind of that is just in a nutshell what we do. And then it's very much exciting to see how that can translate long term. How can this student, after graduation, after leaving school, can actually grow into, the concept of actively solving climate problems regardless of where they find themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. And with that, we will also have Marina with us. Marina, would you like to share about your project and also your project impact, of course? And also one question after you're done sharing about your project, Marina, that we would love to hear from you is on how effective are innovative approaches like using board games to educate young people on climate change and sustainable lifestyle. And I think that your project is a very inspiring example of it. But let's hear from you and on your project and this question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Saha, for today's session. So I would like to share my slide so that it's easy for me to explain in detail about the project that currently implementation by Impact Hub Phnom Penh. So can you confirm if you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. So currently we are implement a Climate Quest program that we received the sub-grant support for from Youth for Climate. So let me go a little bit about Impact Hub. So just briefly about Impact Hub. So Impact Hub is one of the global community network that currently have the community network in 66 countries across the global. And in Cambodia, currently we focus on six sector that are mainly contribute to social development. So about Climate Quest, I might give a bit a background on why we are doing this program, especially on climate education. So I just briefly give a little bit overview of what is happening in Cambodia. So you may see on my slide, there is a flood and drought that currently is a primary climate challenge that currently impact mainly to agriculture because like Cambodia, the country we are depending on agriculture, and that like climate change mainly affect to the agriculture and also linked to economic impact to the our economic, and especially we learned that there is a gap on climate education in education system, especially the youth and the student who are living in rural area. So here is like a brief background that why we coming up with the Climate Quest program. And also here is the Climate Quest program objective. So there are two objectives that we focus on and we want to achieve at the end of project. So we would love to strengthening the youth capacity to empower them, to empower their participation in climate action through a model of climate card game. So we developed two models of climate card game. The card game number one we call Little Earth, and the card game number two we call Greenhouse. And also we include and build capacity to 10 youth ambassador in 3 provinces, Phnom Penh, Ban Nambong, and Siem Reap province. And also we roll out the school outreach event in 5 universities, and youth ambassador that we recruit and we build them with the capacity and confidence. They will continue organize the ambassador community gameplay with their community, with their network, with their peer. And for the objective 2, we increase the stakeholder and community awareness of climate change or I mean the negative impact of climate change through card game distribution and content awareness raising on the impact of social media. So we do we kick off the digital outreach campaign, which we have like three influencers that they are well known on environment and climate awareness in digital in Cambodia, and we conduct partnership outreach campaign. We reach out to organization partner who have similar key alignment on the sector of environment, climate, and youth empowerment. And we also distribute the climate card game that we developed to those who are interested in awareness raising or continue educate about climate action to their network, to their especially currently we are reach out to the organization who established the school center so that they can use our climate card game to as the study tool for like teaching, like change the innovative teaching method with their students. So the program timeline, we implement the program from March to October, and our program also align with the commitment of the Cambodia government that that they commit to have like the long-term carbon nutrition that Cambodia want to be in like net zero emission by 2050. So for the climate quest approach, like I mentioned earlier, we use the model of climate card game. So for Lead the Earth, we integrate the climate action that those include climate change adaptation and climate change mitigation into the card game. So while the player are playing the card game, they can understand which action that they do every day that contribute to pollute to pollute the carbon emission in atmosphere, and the action that they do that could contribute to create a good environment. So with this action, we also introduce the carbon calculation. So you may see on the slide there is carbon calculation. So while they play the game, so they will learn how they will develop the understanding which action that produce more carbon, which action that could reduce more carbon in their daily life. We also introduce the new of climate change, like the new the new information study of climate change as well, because in Cambodia the students are not more interested in discussing about climate change, especially the term of climate dictionary that they never know and what they mean. So we introduce two terms. First is carbon, and second is greenwash. So there is a card of greenwash, and we also write the definition, the explanation what is greenwash mean in this game as well. So for the second card game, we call greenhouse. So the greenhouse is more on building the sustainability for your future, and also the decision of the player who play the game. So while they play the game, they can reflect on their action that currently benefit to them. For example, industry investment and another investment that would benefit to the country, but in the future it might be lead a negative impact. So there is a game that while they play, they can do the reflection between their player on what their decision they will make in order to build a future sustainability for their community, for their future as a youth. So we also conduct the outreach activity like I mentioned earlier. We do in 3 provinces. We almost finalize. We almost finished of our outreach activity, and we reach out to many university students in different university, and also we also successfully recruit the 10 young potential ambassador in 3 provinces. So they are Phnom Penh, Siem Reap, and Battambang. They are representative the climate quest, and they will continue to organize their community gameplay with their network, with their community. But how can they do that? So we provide them with a climate change masterclass. So the objective of masterclass is build them with the capacity and confidence to continue to lead their own community, lead themselves. So we provide them with the series of masterclass session to build their capacity while they finish all the master class session, they will do like the just the brief climate community game play planning, so that while they finalize that they will continue to organize their climate gameplay with their networking. And also, we also invite three influencers in Cambodia. They are well known on environmental and climate discussion in digital, in social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So they will help us to produce the video that would raise awareness about the climate education, climate action, especially call for action. So they will discuss and they will develop the content, media content to introduce how game would contribute to our day-to-day life, and how the climate card game would help us to aware of the action that we do to I mean collectively and individually to contribute to create a better environment for our community. And also, we are currently mapping the organization partner, and Impact Hub have reached out to several organizations. We reached out to Oxfam Cambodia, we reached out to UNDP Cambodia, we reached out to Habitat. Another organization are doing similar approach, and they have the youth group as well. So we reach out to them, we introduce our climate card game, and then they will bring the card game to play with their youth network. Thank you. So this the brief summary of Climate Quest program. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marina. And I have been seeing very inspiring comments for both you, Marina and Jeremiah, from the young participants in the chat. Thank you so much for putting your slides on, Marina. I just want to say that they were really cute and really interactive. So thank you so much for showing us. Also about your project as well. I'm really sure that there were a lot of questions coming as well, and hopefully we can check that. In case you will not be able to ask your question until this session is going on, feel free to also use the platform as an opportunity to talk to each other as well. With that, I would like to give the floor to Manan and Fernando to give some reflections or some comments on the interventions and the projects that Jeremiah and Marina shared. So you have the floor, Fernando and Manan.
No, but a very quick reflection from my side, if I may. So this is a good example of a very realistic projects that are that. So, for example, the Marina project had just two objectives, and one was on youth capacity, another to increase awareness, and also probably that I didn't mention is that sometimes we tend to believe that innovation has to be always related with technology, which is not the case. We can see that the innovative part of Marina's project is the card game, which probably has nothing to do with technology, but it's pretty much thinking out of the box. That's innovative. Living the business as usual, that's innovative. And that's something very, very remarkable. And also for Jeremiah, a very straightforward project, like, you don't need to create your Christmas list to implement. You just need to be focused and know what's the problem that you're trying to solve. You can see clearly what are the synergies that they have created there. So from my side, just congratulations. And from others, probably this could serve as inspiration on how something that may seem small, it's actually having a huge impact in their communities. So thank you both.
Thank you so much, Fernando, for leaving us at that note that less is more sometimes. Thank you so much for sharing that. Manan, the floor is yours for any remarks and reflections.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for this great presentation and inspiring one, I must say. Like I second Fernando, like it's great to see, like the way you have structured it, like it's uh very clear and we see where you're going, like and I will not repeat what you said about, thinking out of the box and what is, important, and broadening the mindset about technology overall. What I would like to give as a last insight is, um, I think you should not lose lose the perspective that what you're doing, at different level, and what I have seen in the presentation is that you have had, like something clear in your mind, to be able to implement, whether it was the cardboard, whether it was, the context, like there was the idea and the straight way forward to be able to implement and deliver. Sometimes we tend to over complexify, and to go in all direction because we have so many ideas. I think what makes what I have seen, successful is that you have the idea and you succeed in channeling it, to achieve some result. And then Jeremiah, also knowing you from other contexts, I know that, you kind of finish that idea and then you jump into another. I think this is also key to success, to be able to frame it, to see where you start, where you go, and how what you need to make it complete and to make it successful, to have clear objectives and to be able to elaborate a concrete plan. I think that's powerful, and what you have shown, already, it's great. I really wish you all the best for that, and hopefully we will cross in other context again.
Thank you so much, both Manan and Fernando, and thank you so much, Jeremiah and Marina, for your very inspiring projects. Now it's time again for a Zoom poll. And this Zoom poll hopefully is going to be a real quick one, because after that I have a little story to share from the platform. And of course, two very interesting speakers lined up as well. So can you all see the Zoom poll on your screens? As I can see it, probably I start reading. It says that what is the term for the practice of incorporating climate education content across various subjects in school curricula? Is it interdisciplinary learning? It is climate integration, or is it cross-curricular education? So what is the word for integrating climate change and climate action into all all subjects in the school curricula? And let's give it just 1 minute, like always, and let's see. Thank you so much once again for keeping the chat really vibrant. Really appreciate the enthusiasm and passion for this topic. Hopefully we can also continue it after the session as well. And then let's see the answers from the Zoom poll now. A lot of answers are coming already in the chat box, which is great. And yeah, we have the correct answer actually as cross-curricular education is called when you integrate climate change and climate education across several subjects and in the school curricula. So hopefully that was a new learning for us. If not, congratulations on the right answer. With that, as I promised, a little story. The As we have heard about from our bodies on how they are integrating climate education and climate awareness in projects and in making it accessible to teachers and students equally, there was one very interesting perspective that came forward in the platform discussion when we were discussing on this topic. And that was from a teacher. And she expressed that her students face two great challenges. And what are those great challenges? It's definitely funding, but that's not the main context of this conversation. The great challenges were that there is not always like a certain motivation for climate education at a one circular time when it's like outside of the curricular. When it's not part of the curricular, it's it takes time and efforts from both teachers and students, and dedication, of course, from both teachers and students to implement and come forward and be part of these activities. Why am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because it's really relevant to the other two youth speakers who are supposed to be coming very soon now and sharing about their projects. We also had one very inspiring case study on the platform shared by a young person where they were sharing about the case of Uganda, where students are taking the role forward and they are basically doing constant research on games and arts, and in the context of climate resilience. This really much echoes with what I assume Fernando said, that it's innovation is not technology. You can create anything that you want and can be innovative with your climate solutions, with your art, with your music, and whatever you're good at doing, right? So, don't limit yourself. Hopefully, this was the learning that we all got here in the session. And with that, we very much in the context of welcoming our next speakers for the group on climate education and awareness. We have our first speaker, Lara. Lara is from Philippines and she's passionate about green jobs, and she's the co-founder of the project Green Economy Ready. And then we have the second speaker with us, of course, who's not the last one for today, hopefully, is Victoria Alice. Victoria is from Seychelles, representing her project on mainstreaming climate education and climate literacy in Seychelles national curriculum. Victoria has represented Seychelles in COP26 of the UNFCCC and COP27 of the UNFCCC, and is currently leading the climate education project together with the Ministry of Education and Climate Science. So we start with Lara. And Lara, for you, the questions that I have here is, of course, would you like to share about your project, Green Economy Ready first, and how is that coming around? What is the background? And then also, what do you think are the key challenges in preparing teachers, the ones that we talked about previously also, preparing teachers to effectively integrate green jobs and sustainable careers, career guidance into the curricula itself? So Lara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Sahir. So again, I'm Lara. So I'm a teacher specializing in climate change education and meaningful youth engagement in the Philippines. So I'll start by talking about the motivation regarding the project, and then some details on the project, and answering Sahir's question about the challenges of teachers in integrating green jobs in the formal curriculum. So I worked with a lot of my fellow young people on environmental and climate action. And from there, I realized how passionate we are in volunteering, especially when we are still in school. And I could really see the passion in the comment section or in the chat section and with my fellow speakers. But not everyone has the opportunity to continue this important mission, because we have to support our family, we have to feed ourselves and romanticize life a bit, right? So I was fortunate to be employed in different green jobs or have that supportive environment where I could turn my job to be a bit green. And when I say green job, we're just referring to any decent job that contributes to improving the environment. And in this project, we also added the social or community aspect to it. So basically, this project is the aim is to just encourage more young people to raise awareness on the opportunities of green jobs. So with Green Economy Ready, we are creating a toolkit that will help teachers integrate green jobs in the career counseling for senior high school students in the Philippines. In a lifetime, we spend 90,000 hours working. So that's a third of our lives. So a big chunk of living sustainably could actually be spent on our jobs, but it's often overlooked. So the Green Economy Toolkit also features gender-inclusive examples of Filipinos in green jobs, which encourages boys and girls to pursue jobs regardless if it's dominated by the opposite sex. And by creating a toolkit, it is replicable as it serves as a guide for teachers or a do-it-yourself exercise for youth. And also for this toolkit, we're partnering also with the Department of Education in the Philippines. We hope to put it in its repositories and other partners to offer the continuous guidance for teachers. So through this project, we hope that more people are aware of the increasing opportunities to be employed in a green job, where we can continue our passion to create a better, sustainable, and equitable world, not only for others or the marginalized, but for ourselves too. And for the question on the key challenges in preparing teachers to effectively integrate green jobs into the curricula, So I worked before with the Department of Education, and currently we're in the process of writing the toolkit. So we were just holding some interviews and discussions with teachers, especially those who are providing career guidance. And there are two main challenges, and I think it was already mentioned as well in the Youth for Climate discussion forum that you mentioned here. So the first one is the curriculum is crowded, and the second one is the teachers are overworked, sadly. So for the first challenge on the crowding of the curriculum, we're not creating a brand new subject or competency to promote green jobs. We're working with the current curriculum and finding ways on how to integrate green jobs. And of course, making the curriculum more responsive to the challenges of our time is very important. However, we do acknowledge that it is a long process involving lots of people, and recently the Philippines just updated its curriculum. So for this intervention, we're going to be creative. We are being creative on how we put green jobs in career counseling. And hopefully it could be a case study for when the curriculum is being revised. And for the second challenge, we are creating a toolkit so it's easier for the teachers to implement it. So they just needed to attend a short training and then they could use it in class. While we're working with teachers to create a toolkit, not all the teachers will have the time and the commitment to create these activities. So the toolkit will encourage them to integrate green jobs because it will not be as complicated and will not take too much of their time. And we're also making sure that the teachers that we're engaging with are aware of the urgency for climate action. So just last week, the Philippines experienced a storm, and for myself personally, my family and I experienced one of the highest floods of our lives, which disrupted electricity and connectivity for days. And I actually didn't know if I'm able to attend this webinar because of it. But I think every Filipino has experienced the impacts of climate change, and appealing to that emotional connection is actually important. That we are not mere victims of the impact, we are survivors and we can take action. So that's all for Green Economy Ready.
Thank you so much, Lara, for ending at such a positive note. Hope that it brought hope for a lot of us as well, and hope that you and your family are doing okay, and also the fellow young people in the Philippines. With that, I pass the floor to Victoria. Victoria, do you want to share with us about your project, and how does the integration of climate education and climate literacy into national curriculum, such as in Seychelles, address the gaps in existing education system that we have currently, and how does that effectively empower students with climate literacy and awareness? If you can share some examples as well of that, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you so much, Saher. Well, to start off, so my name is Victoria Alice from the Seychelles, and I am one of 3 young Seychellois, the other 2 being Magali Rocamora, who's actually in today's call, and Jeremy Raguin, who are leading the project, so called Mainstreaming Climate Education and Climate Literacy in Seychelles National Curriculum. And the project is being implemented in partnership with the Seychelles Ministry of Education and Climate Science. Climate Science is an international organization leading the way in climate education by basically creating free educational courses, videos, resources, and tools to improve climate understanding and education around the world. So it's important to note that we, as young Seychellois, we are facilitators, and that this project would not have been possible without the endorsement and active participation of the Ministry and of Climate Science, who is the expert in the project. So why the project? I mean, this was really driven, by the existential threat that climate change represents to small island developing states, and Seychelles is a SIDS. And as young Seychellois, we have the objective to advance climate resilience in our country. So while Seychelles does have several national environmental and sustainable education initiatives, such as the Seychelles Eco School program, there is an important gap in terms of knowledge, tools, and capacity building on climate change in the formal education system. So we started this project because we believe students and teachers in Seychelles need comprehensive and contextualized knowledge and understanding of climate change's causes and impacts in order to make informed decisions and to take meaningful action. So it's important to highlight that this is a pilot project, and the objective of the pilot project is focused on empowering schools and teachers, focusing on primary 6 to secondary 2, so that's students between 11 to 14 years of age, with not only context-specific resources and training, but also with new Seychelles and SIDS-focused education materials that can then be expanded regionally and then internationally. So in order to meet that objective, we have three main outcomes. The outcome one is what we call the consultation phase, and this is a really key phase, and this is what we're currently tackling. So here we want to gain an increased understanding of Seychelles climate literacy resources and existing knowledge and capacity in order to provide, adapt, and co-create appropriate cross-curriculum resources and training. So to achieve this, what we're planning on doing is using a whole school approach, and we will be consulting staff within the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Environment, as well, of course, as teachers, national curriculum working groups. And the findings here will inform which climate science materials will be selected, adapted, and brought to Seychelles, and how trainings will actually be conducted. So the second outcome is then, co-creating climate education materials and resources, distributing these to schools, to selected schools, and to train the teachers. So this is where we're hoping that these new resource creation will also be useful for students, not only in Seychelles, but in other SIDS, regionally and globally. As outcome three, here we're looking at monitoring and evaluating. So as part of the replicability in Seychelles and other SIDS, we basically want to develop a brief but action-orientated monitoring and evaluation report, which will be produced to help climate science in Seychelles youth replicate and scale similar projects in Seychelles and other SIDS. I mean, it's important to know that we have a limited budget. So it's not the only reason why we're only focusing on certain classes, but hopefully this is just, a step into the right direction. Hopefully this can lead to other projects that can help and support the Ministry of Education and mainstreaming climate education across all topics and, both in primary and secondary schools. So I know we were running out of time, just to answer your second question, Saher. In the case of Seychelles, public schools, which follow the national curriculum and account for the majority of the country's youth, climate change is only mentioned during class lessons in primary 6, so that's 11 to 12 years old, and then it's studied in secondary 1, that's the following year. And after that, the teachers are not obliged to teach climate change to their students. It is also important to note that climate change at the moment is only mentioned in geography and hard sciences, so it's definitely not transdisciplinary. Hope I said that correctly. And so as an example, this project, this Y4C project, is really trying to address that issue, focusing on public schools and on those specific age groups. And hopefully, like I said before, it will lead to other projects and other supporting mechanisms for the ministry. I think it's also important to highlight that when we're talking about mainstreaming climate education in the national curriculum and how that empowers students and teachers, it does it in many different ways. And I like what Mr. Andrade, hopefully I said your name correctly, said in the very beginning, that it's important to limit the risks of misinformation that can emerge from the informal education sector. I think that by looking at the formal education sector, there's more control, and we can ensure that we have a content that is proved and that is consistent as well. But it also gives the opportunity to assign national budget, to develop more materials, more knowledge, more capacity building around climate change education. And I think it also reminds everyone that climate change is complex, and we should be using an integrative and transdisciplinary approach because it does concern every citizen. So it definitely has many, many ways to help empower students with climate literacy and awareness. I'm going to stop there because I think I went above time. I apologize.
No worries at all, Victoria. Thank you so much for sharing about your project in such detail, and also I think that sharing those challenges and how it has been developed as well, I think that was really useful. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much, Laura, once again, for sharing that teacher's perspective and the challenges as well. With that, we come towards the end of our session, of our webinar for today. Before we end, there is a Q&A session, and that is right now, basically. So feel free to ask any questions that you have. Feel free to leave them in the chat box or raise your hand if you can. Please, if you can use the chat, and that is the best way of asking questions. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and we're having a look at it. So let's give it like 2 minutes to get the questions coming, and then meanwhile, we also want to mention that there's always an option of having this conversation on climate literacy at the climate literacy section at the platform that we have. A link was shared previously of the platform, the Youth for Climate platform. Please be welcome. We cannot end this conversation here with this webinar. We can always ask questions, share about our projects or any ideas basically that we have. So the platform exists, the opportunity to sparking ideas and exchanges exist, and co-creation exists. Feel free to use it, and feel free to ask any of your questions in the chat. Yeah, I will just go and have a look at the chat. So about the next webinar, the next webinar will be happening in August, which is the next month basically, and it's going to be focused on indigenous knowledge and nature-based solution. We will be having the very interesting platform discussion for that as well, and then leading to the webinar session as well. We will convey more information about the next webinar also in the email. Somebody asked about this webinar's recording. So just as the previous webinar's recording was shared in the chat previously, we will also share about the brief that we mentioned at the beginning of the session, and also the recording for this webinar with you all. And let's also, regarding the project presentations and everything, we will definitely also reach out with all the resources that were shared, and that is good. I think that was a very interesting session for today, and thank you so much for sharing everything in the chat as well. Thank you for keeping the chat really vibrant as well, and thank you so much to all the awardees and all the participants. We really appreciate your company throughout this webinar. The conversation for the upcoming webinar and for this webinar will also happen in the chat and on the platform. Sorry, that is it for today. Thank you for joining, and we will see each other next time. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. That was great. Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Thank you.